Hi, it's Katrina. Egypt continues to captivate us as the sands shift, technology improves, and we get new glimpses into its rich and complex past. In this video, we're taking a look at some of the most recent and significant discoveries. So grab your shovel or your Lidar and let's go. The true origin of the Sphinx. What if nobody made the Sphinx? What if the world's most iconic, most mysterious, most alluring monument was shaped by nothing but wind and rain? A small group of lab coat-wearing scientists over at NYU have a spicy new theory that shakes up everything Egyptologists thought they knew. For centuries, Egyptologists agreed on one thing. They all believed that the Sphinx's face was carved by expert stonemasons. The face of the Sphinx clearly wasn't made by wind. It would be like saying Mount Rushmore's faces were made by natural erosion. That's crazy talk. The debate is not about the face, since that is clearly visible, but the body. How did the massive lion torso come to be? Enter NYU's Applied Mathematics Lab. Lee Fristroff and his team decided to get experimental, like Mythbusters meets National Geographic, using water to simulate desert wind, because why not cosplay as Mother Nature with a garden hose? They ran an erosion test on clay mounds. What happened? They accidentally made a baby Sphinx. No chisel, no masons, no tools at all, just physics and fast flow. Nature carved its very own Sphinx without anyone giving it directions. Now, these scientists suspect the Sphinx was already cat-shaped 5,000 years ago. When the Egyptians showed up, they noticed the uncanny resemblance and carved a head onto the cat-shaped rock. But wait, it gets weirder. The NYU team isn't the only group of scientists trying to understand the mysteries of the Sphinx. Robert Schoch, a geologist who has been ruffling feathers since the 1990s, says the Sphinx is actually 12,000 years old. Not 4,500 like mainstream scientists say. Then, some Ukrainian geologists took that number and cranked it to insane levels, claiming that erosion patterns show the Sphinx could be 800,000 years old. But back then, humans weren't even around. At least we weren't. Homo heidelbergensis was around, but I don't really know if they were making sphinxes. The Ice Age was in full swing, so what, were early hippos and saber-toothed cats roaming around this rock formation? Their answer is maybe. Another theory states that the Egyptians built the Sphinx using vibration technology. Because do you know what's better than a forklift? Sonic levitation. Some theorists believe ancient Egyptians used vibrations to float pyramid blocks around like they had telekinesis. Swedish scientist Olof Alexandersson even said sound could nullify gravity, which, if true, raises the question, where are our anti-gravity speakers? We can barely get Bluetooth to work. What really cranks up the mystery, though, is this idea that a lost archive could be buried right under the Sphinx. Several laser scans have shown an anomaly right under the Sphinx that might be showing a large chamber of some sort. Legends have been swirling for centuries that the lost knowledge of our ancient ancestors is hidden in a room called the Hall of Records. Theories abound about what exactly could be hidden in the Hall of Records. It could contain the true history of humanity, knowledge of ancient technologies, spiritual wisdom and universal mysteries, and even the history of Atlantis. Perhaps it's a cave full of old scrolls like the Dead Sea Caves. Which theory do you like the most? The reason so many people think there is a Hall of Records hiding under the Sphinx is thanks to mystic Edgar Cayce. He had several visions that he shared in the mid-20th century. The idea of a Hall of Records spread like wildfire because we are obsessed with lost knowledge and the mysteries of ancient civilizations. Hello, that's why you're here, right? Legend goes that Greek philosopher Solon went to Egypt and went exploring down under the Sphinx with a mysterious high priest. There, he found the story of Atlantis, which Plato would later make famous. The Hall of Records is a concept based on psychic readings. Or is it? Robert Schoch, the same guy who said the Sphinx is 12,000 years old, allegedly found a rectangular cavity under the Sphinx using sonar scans in the 1990s. But just as things got interesting, the Egyptian government said nope and shut the whole thing down. To make matters even more suspicious, scientists have already proven that there is indeed a tunnel under the Sphinx. In 1989, a team of Japanese researchers from Waseda University, led by Professor Sakuji Yoshimura, rolled into Giza with fancy equipment and discovered a tunnel beneath the Sphinx's left paw. The tunnel ran downward at an angle, heading in the direction of the Pyramid of Khafre, like some ancient subway to secrets. And then nothing. The Egyptian authorities came in like, cool story, now pack it up, and kicked them out of the site. The Japanese scientists never got to continue. No one has ever been allowed to see where the mystery tunnel leads. The government said it was to protect its structural integrity, but what do you think? Other researchers met the same fate, including Egyptologist Matt Growling. Matt stirred the pot even more by claiming that the secret door to the Sphinx's underground world had been discovered 2 centuries ago and quietly shipped off to the Louvre Museum in Paris. Locals have whispered for generations that the Sphinx is just the welcome mat, and the real party is underground, a hidden chamber possibly located between the paws or inside its head. The recent SAR pyramid scans may be showing just that. The hidden structures recently found under the pyramids have everyone asking, what's really down there? But Egypt refuses to let anyone inside. They take their job as guardians of history very seriously, and honestly, can you blame them? Laborers buried in the pyramids? Pyramids for the people? Egypt's fancy tombs may have been home to more than just the pharaohs. Had you been alive 4,500 years ago, you may have been able to secure a spot in the most glorious burial ground in the world. New research is changing history in a big way. The pyramids used to be thought of as VIP real estate for pharaohs with golden funerary masks and names like Amenhotep the Totally Divine. Well, not anymore. Archaeologists digging around the ancient Egyptian colony of Tombos in what is now northern Sudan found the skeletons of common laborers buried in pyramids. The same back-breaking, sun-scorched people who helped build the pyramids were then buried inside them. But was it done on purpose with honor, or was it a way to hide the occupational hazards of working there? Let's take a look and then let me know what you think. Researchers from the Netherlands and the US took a look at these skeletons and spotted wear and tear on their bones. It's the kind of wear you get from decades of manual labor, not from lounging on gold couches while being fanned with palm leaves. These people were working their butts off and their skeletons to prove it. What's amazing is that they were buried alongside nobles, scribes, and other elite members of society. So the researchers realized they had been buried there on purpose. Why were the rich mixed with the not so rich? One tomb belonged to Pharaoh Siamun of the 21st dynasty, and yet there were laborers buried in the same zone. Some of the laborers' tombs had funerary cones, fancy jars, and the kinds of decorations you'd expect from people who never touched a shovel in their life. Before you ask, the answer is no. The laborers didn't commission these pyramids themselves. According to researchers, elites like Pharaoh Siamun built them for their family and their most trusted staff. Were laborers really that trusted by pharaohs to be buried alongside them? Maybe not in the rest of Egypt, but Tombos was not your average ancient Egyptian town. It was a colonial outpost with a very relaxed vibe. Egyptians and Nubians lived side by side here, shared culture, and didn't stab each other as much as they did everywhere else. It was a mini utopia at the farthest edge of Egypt's southern territory. Researchers even said that Tombos had low violence rates, healthier people, and relatively low stress. It was the kind of place where a high-ranking official might tip his mason with more than just beer. Maybe eternal burial privileges. This discovery challenges the dusty old idea that Egypt's social classes were strictly segregated, even in death. In Tombos, people broke the mold by sharing their tombs. Could this be proof of early egalitarianism? A sweet retirement perk for good service? Or just pharaohs being generous landlords in the underworld? And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Matt Raiola and Infinity Quest for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with me today. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. The origin of Egypt. One of the biggest, most burning questions in all of archaeology is this: when did ancient Egypt become ancient Egypt? Scientists can date the pyramids, the tombs, the cities, but when did Egypt start? And how did it start? How long were people living on the Nile before they started building pyramids? A team from the University of Oxford recently stopped guessing and started dating. Radiocarbon dating, that is. They teamed up with computers and ancient bones to build a timeline. And what they found might just leave the history books asking for a rewrite. Egypt's first king named Aha the same sound I make when I Google something and find out I was right all along, took the throne around 3100 BC. Aha means the fighter, by the way, which is surprisingly cool for a name that's basically a statement. Before this new study, historians thought early Egyptians took about 1,000 years to go from farming lentils and sandals to forming a state with borders, bureaucracy, and temple politics. But now, the new research says it was more like 3 to 4 centuries. Lead researcher Dr. Michael D. said Egypt didn't just form, it launched itself into statehood like it had something to prove. Unlike Mesopotamia, where agriculture dragged on for a few thousand years before kings showed up, Egypt went straight from farming to forming god-kings. Now let's meet the first pharaohs. Thanks to their clever dating strategy, combining carbon-dated hair, bones, and old plants with archaeology and computer modeling, the team managed to get the early royal roster in order. It all began with King Aha 5,100 years ago. Then came King Der, who ruled for 50 years. And after him was King Jet, Queen Merneith, then Den, Anedjib, Semerket, and Ka'ah. If you haven't heard of any of these rulers, no stress, most people haven't. Professor Joanne Fletcher from the University of York called the research tremendously valuable, which is British for holy cow, this is a big deal. A sharper timeline means the experts can finally get a clearer picture of how Egypt became Egypt. Also, this tighter timeline reshapes how you and I see Egypt's early society. It was innovative, fast-moving, and went from zero to hero way quicker than other civilizations. They went from dirt farming to full-blown kingdom in about as long as it took us to go from Vine to TikTok or MySpace to Facebook. Maybe not exactly, but you get my point. The tomb of Ramses Commander. Now here's a discovery you've been waiting for. Or not, it might be a surprise. Archaeologists in Egypt just found a 3,200-year-old tomb that might have belonged to a high-ranking military commander, one who served under the ultimate battlefield boss, Ramses III. He's often credited as being ancient Egypt's last great pharaoh. The tomb, found at the site of Tel El Mashuta in the northeast, is more of a mud brick mansion than a grave. It's so vast you could rent the thing out. Inside, researchers found a gold ring engraved with Ramses III's name, a set of bronze arrowheads, and a plethora of other random grave goods. It almost definitely belonged to the commander of Ramses III's armies. This is a huge discovery because Ramses III was the one who fought the legendary Sea Peoples. This commander may have been at the forefront of the Bronze Age's greatest military conflict. In 1175 BC, Egypt was having a great time. They were vibing with all their gold and temples and glorious monuments. And then, to spoil their fun, the Sea Peoples showed up like uninvited guests and tried to invade. No one really knows who the Sea Peoples were. All historians know is that they were a major naval power. They wiped out the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, the Mitanni. Everywhere the Sea Peoples went, Bronze Age civilizations collapsed. And then they showed up in Egypt. What did Ramses III do? He sat back and waited like a strategic genius. He let them sail right into the Nile Delta. Then he unleashed archers from the riverbanks and had Egyptian ships wreck the enemy's boats. It was a brutal ambush, and the Sea Peoples got served. They got served hard. Egypt survived. The military leaders who helped Ramses pull off the impossible counterattack likely earned themselves more than a participation trophy, like, say, a sweet tomb filled with war bling. Let's get back to the tomb. Professor Anthony Spallinger and Egyptologist David Warburton said that without an inscription confirming the identity of the tomb's owner, they can't say for sure that it was the chief military commander. However, the relics in the tomb all point to someone in the army, presumably someone in power. The excavation team is staying optimistic. They're convinced they have found someone who played a serious role in defending Egypt's borders when most of the Mediterranean world was crumbling like a Nature Valley granola bar. For now, the tomb is open, the mystery lives on, and archaeologists are playing the world's slowest game of Clue. When they learn more, I'll be sure to tell you about it on Origins Explained. And stay tuned because the story of the day is up next. The city hidden beneath the pyramids. Here we go! Experts are now fighting over a hidden city underneath Egypt's pyramids. A recent radar scan is showing huge anomalies underground that are large enough to be an entire city, estimated at 38,000 years old. I went over this discovery when it was first made, so be sure to check out that video after this one. But in the meantime, let's recap. This unbelievable new theory has been launched by two Italian researchers, Dr. Corrado Malanga and Dr. Filippo Biondi, who scanned the Khafre pyramid, the big one in the middle of the three main pyramids. They used proprietary technology and SAR, synthetic aperture radar signals, and what they found could change everything. Using SAR, they have found what look like 8 vertical cylinder-shaped structures, aligned perfectly in twos, extending more than 648 meters below the pyramid. Underneath that are even more unknown structures that go 4,000 feet deeper. And then beyond that, scans show evidence that there are even more structures that go on for another 2 kilometers, interconnecting under all 3 pyramids and further under the Giza Plateau. There is so much going on, the team said there could be an entire hidden city below the pyramids. Keep in mind, these are all anomalies shown by the team's Khafre SAR scan, but there are no confirmed structures or lost cities found yet. This whole thing would be easier to dismiss as nonsense if not for some surprisingly convincing ancient records. Greek historian Herodotus dropped hints about hidden chambers over 1,000 years ago. In the 20th century, famous psychic Edgar Cayce said there was a hall of lost knowledge under the pyramids and it had something to do with aliens. But this is where a lot of people start to roll their eyes. Some people even think that Jesus Christ himself is buried somewhere below the pyramids. But what do the experts say? The Egyptologists and scientists? Dr. Sarah Parkak, a space archaeologist, said you can make any satellite image look like anything if you play around with it enough. She basically said that if you squint hard enough, your living room rug starts looking like a Maya temple. Dr. Lawrence Conyers, ground-penetrating radar specialist, called the claims a huge exaggeration. Meanwhile, Dr. Zahi Hawass, the head honcho of Egyptology, said the whole theory is baseless. Hawass also said no one even had permits to study inside the pyramid, so everything they have done is just speculate from the air. Malanga and Biondi are under heavy fire for their claims. The most damning aspect of what they're saying is that it's kind of physically impossible. The water table at Giza is only a few dozen feet down. If you dig deep below the earth there, it wouldn't be stable enough to hold a city. If there is a city a mile below Giza, it's underwater, but hey, stranger things have happened. But in fact, the Giza pyramids are already slowly eroding from water coming up from the ground. There is a possibility that groundwater will destroy the pyramids in the next few decades. It would be so cool for Malanga and Biondi to present definitive proof of a hidden city, but right now it's looking like there's probably not a lost subterranean metropolis under Giza. In any case, it seems like there is something going on under the pyramids. What do you think about all this? Are there hidden chambers, tombs under there, a battery, an entire city? Let me know. The lost city of Nefertiti's daughter. You're grabbing a beachside falafel, the Mediterranean breeze in your hair, and little do you know, just a few feet beneath your sandals lies a secret. Beneath a rocky ridge west of modern-day Alexandria, archaeologists stumbled upon a whole ancient Egyptian town. See? It's not unheard of. Not just ruins, but a town buzzing with history, including a fascinating connection to Nefertiti's enigmatic daughter. This place is around 3,400 years old and possibly got its start during the reign of Akhenaten, Egypt's sun-obsessed rebel pharaoh. More on him later, so don't go anywhere. The site called Qam el-Nubus sits between the Mediterranean Sea and Lake Marut. For years, experts figured nothing exciting happened there before the Greeks showed up around 332 BC. Turns out, they were wrong. Sylvain Denon of the French National Center for Scientific Research said this was a planned settlement, complete with streets that drained rainwater like an ancient plumber's dream. You know a civilization means business when they design their city around waterworks. Even more fascinating is that the town had a temple built by Ramesses II, not to be confused with his successor Ramses III, who fought the Sea Peoples. Researchers found what appeared to be a military outpost with admin buildings and fortified walls. Put all this together and what do you have? An ancient city lost to the sands. The most impressive item found so far is a fragment of a wine jar. It's got everyone's attention because the fragment is stamped with the name Meritaton. She was the daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. She also may have been Tutankhamun's half-sister. Meritaton is one of Egypt's great mysteries because she was hugely important, but most of her life is shrouded in secrecy. It's believed she married Pharaoh Smenkhkare, who happened to be either her uncle or her brother. And scientists think she may have become Pharaoh herself, if just briefly, under the incredibly long and hard to pronounce name of Ankh-Khepurere Neferneferuaten. Go ahead and try to spell it. I dare you. Excavations are still ongoing, and no one is sure how big the settlement really was yet. They don't even have a name for the place. Some are wondering if it wasn't Mary Taton's royal city or possibly one founded by her mom, Nefertiti. This is about as much information as is available right now, but at least you're all set for trivia night when the question of what was Nefertiti's daughter's name comes up. And for that, you're welcome. Now hit that subscribe button for more and be sure to tell your friends. Putting Ramesses back together again. Ramesses II sat on a wall. Ramesses II had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Ramesses together again, but archaeologists can, and they just did. Okay, let me explain my weird nursery rhyme remix. For almost a century, a statue of Ramesses II has been awkwardly hanging out in the Egyptian desert, looking like the world's biggest and most broken action figure. Discovered in 1930 by German archaeologist Gunther Roeder, it stood headless about 150 miles south of Cairo. No one had ever been able to figure out where the top half of the gigantic statue was. The mystery went unsolved for 96 years. In March 2024, a team of Egyptian and U.S. archaeologists found the long-lost upper half of the colossal Ramesses II statue near the modern city of El Ashmunain. In ancient times, this place was called Chemnu. It was a big deal provincial capital during the Old Kingdom, and was later renamed Hermopolis Magna by the Romans. They were the original rebranders 2,000 years ago, changing the name of everything to something very Latin-y. Now let's talk size. The upper half is a whopping 12.5 feet tall, putting the full statue at 23 feet. And it's not just a big rock with a vague face. It's Ramesses II in full pharaoh mode. I'm talking headdress, royal cobra, and enough ancient swagger to make Michelangelo's David look like a toy. When the archaeologists first spotted the statue laying face down in January 2024, nobody knew what shape it was in. It was like opening a 96-year-old time capsule and praying it wasn't just sand and disappointment. I have good news. Not only was the carving crisp enough to recognize Ramesses' distinct facial features, but it also had traces of blue and yellow paint. Paint on a statue this old is phenomenal. Next, scientists need to reunite the top half with the bottom half, which is still chilling in El Ashmunain. Egyptian archaeologist Bassem Gehad already filed the paperwork for this long overdue reunion. If approved, and let's be honest, no one is saying no to the King of Kings, even 3,000 years after his death, the ancient ruler will finally be whole again. This will be one of the most amazing statues in all of Egypt. Before moving on, here are some bonus facts to impress your pals. Ramesses II ruled for 66 years and fathered over 100 kids. Now that's what you call legacy. Unboxing a sealed pyramid. You know how sometimes you clean out your garage and find weird stuff you forgot you owned? Like all those random National Geographic magazines from the 80s? Well, imagine doing that, but instead of your high school yearbook, you uncover a 4,000-year-old sealed pyramid. And inside is absolute ancient chaos. Welcome to Dashur, Egypt, a desert spot already known for its 3 pyramids commissioned by Pharaoh Sneferu in 2600 BC. Sneferu went on a building rampage, constructing the Bent Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, and the Meidum Pyramid. And now archaeologists have found a new one, a brand spanking new pyramid sealed up tighter than your mom's spaghetti in a Tupperware container you left in the freezer. Here's how it all went down. Quarry workers were doing their thing when they hit some suspiciously fancy limestone blocks. In came Dr. Chris Naunton, a British Egyptologist and walking encyclopedia of the ancient world. He led a team to check things out, and the Smithsonian Channel even rolled in to document it. When you're unboxing a sealed pyramid, you better do it on camera. What they found was a sealed underground chamber inside the ruins of the pyramid, unopened for 4,000 years. It probably had that new tomb smell and everything. Or old tomb, you know what I mean. Then when they opened it, oh boy. Instead of a serene royal resting place, they found a scene of devastation. Artifacts were trashed, burial objects were broken. It looked like a gang of raccoons got loose inside the tomb and trashed the place. But it was sealed. What the heck happened? The team suspects an inside job. It looks like the tomb was looted before it was sealed, like robbing your own house and then locking up and going on vacation. Dr. Chris Naunton called it an ancient crime scene. But who was the victim? Inside the jumbled chaos, archaeologists found a damaged canopic chest used in storing organs. With some high-tech scanning, they managed to read the faded hieroglyphs on the jar. It belonged to none other than Princess Hatshepsut. Before you start shouting, wait, the Pharaoh Hatshepsut? Hold your scarabs. This is a different Hatshepsut than the extremely famous one you might be thinking of. In fact, she is a completely unknown one. No records, no fanfare, not even a weird statue. But she had her own pyramid. Egyptologists are freaking out right now. No one has ever heard of this princess. There isn't a record of her in sight, but she had her own mighty stone triangle, and that's not something you come by often. Think about how many pharaohs didn't get their own pyramid. Historians think she may have lived during the 13th dynasty, a time when Egypt was in anarchy mode. The royal family tree was more like a royal tumbleweed, messy, tangled, and full of grudges. So an unknown princess had her tomb wrecked, robbed, and then sealed. Was it part of a royal power struggle, a posthumous political purge, or the ancient mortuary crew ripping off their dead boss? Let me know what you think in the comments. Life under the crazy pharaoh. Grab your sunscreen and some spiritual flexibility because I'm taking you to meet Egypt's most controversial pharaoh. He ruled 3,000 years ago alongside Queen Nefertiti. He was the father of Mary Taton, who I told you about earlier, and King Tut. He was also the pharaoh who woke up one day and was like, let's build a new city from scratch, just for fun. Oh, and I came up with a new god, and you all have to worship him. Seriously, this pharaoh didn't just flip the religious script, he flipped the whole kingdom. He shut down Egypt's House of Gods like it was a discontinued Netflix show and replaced it with Aten, the sun god. Egypt went from dozens of deities to one single god, and Akhenaten wanted one city to match his one god, so he sent his workers to build it. And while they were busy doing that, he ordered the citizens of other cities to pack up and move. Now, modern archaeologists have uncovered the ruins of one of those abandoned towns. They found it near Luxor, close to famous monuments like the Colossi of Memnon. This forgotten city is called Soud Aten. It was once a bustling suburb. Kids played in the streets, bread cooked in ovens, blacksmiths pounding away on copper tools. Then, from out of nowhere, the pharaoh's guy showed up and told everyone to move. No goodbye party, no final sweep of the living room. People dropped their cowhide projects and bailed lest they be whipped furiously by the pharaoh's soldiers. Inside the ruins, archaeologists found what looks like an ancient town hall and possibly a police station. Even cooler is a little piece of technology that is sort of unbelievable. Many of the homes discovered in Soud Aten had built-in showers. Actual showers in which you could stand and clean yourself. Instead of going to the river or dumping a bucket on their head, they had real showers. Meanwhile, over in Europe, people were trying not to die from the plague because they were so filthy. Then there's the fish. Zahi Hawass expressed his bafflement at the discovery of a fish covered in gold. It was dug up completely wrapped in gold, like the weirdest mummy in Egyptian history. Someone took a perfectly normal fish and blinged it out for no apparent reason. Experts also found 500 statues of Sekhmet, the goddess of war and healing, who was one of the most famous Egyptian deities. Fierce and worshipped everywhere, Sekhmet's followers were likely a little sour about Aten telling them they couldn't worship her any longer. Maybe this is why so many statues were left behind. But what was Akhenaten's deal? Why change religion so profoundly on a whim? According to Yasmin El-Shazli, deputy director at the American Research Center in Egypt, Akhenaten wasn't inventing sun worship from scratch. His dad, Amenhotep III, already leaned heavily into solar theology. Akhenaten just took it and ran with it like a kid yelling, "It's my religion now!" Eventually, Akhenaten built a new capital for all his solar worshippers. It was called Tel El Amarna and was erected a full 200 miles south of Cairo. Akhenaten moved there with Queen Nefertiti, who was probably wondering if she'd packed enough sunscreen for this Aten-centric reboot. Everything started out okay and then crumbled into a complete disaster. The good times did not last. After Akhenaten's death, King Tut tried to keep the lights on at Aten City while doing a religious U-turn. But the city of Aten was promptly abandoned anyway by all the people who didn't want to move there in the first place. No big deal though. The young pharaoh fixed the mess his dad made. He had the capital moved back to Thebes, the multi-god pantheon returned, and Akhenaten's legacy erased faster than your browser history on the work computer. Temples to Aten were smashed, Akhenaten's name was scrubbed off monuments, and Aten worship was tossed into the let's never speak of this again pile. Now archaeologists have both cities to learn from. These two abandoned places prove that even in ancient Egypt, not everything was pyramids and perfume. Sometimes it was sudden relocations, religious rebranding, and a pharaoh with a new god who this attitude. It is also a perfect example of how one powerful yet deranged man can completely sideswipe his own country. Akhenaten uprooted people from their homes, demolished religious institutions, and most likely crippled the economy while he was at it.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Mummified baboons. For centuries, the ancient Egyptians imported and mummified captive baboons. Some of these primates likely worked as service animals and to show off wealth, while others were used in the worship of Thoth, a god who is sometimes depicted as having a baboon's head. It's not the baboons themselves, but where they come from that intrigued primatologist and anthropology professor Nathaniel Dominy. The Egyptians described importing baboons from Punt, he explained in an interview with Live Science. Was Punt real or a myth? There is ample evidence to suggest that Punt was a real place. Egyptian records describe it as the land of their ancestors and praise its abundance of trade goods, including resin, gold, ebony, ivory, and wild animals. But experts have never been able to figure out exactly where Punt was, until now perhaps. Dominy worked with a team of scientists to analyze the isotopes in modern-day baboons and compare them with information gleaned from 7 mummified specimens in hopes of determining their origins, which would then theoretically lead them to Punt. 2 of the mummified baboons date back to the New Kingdom period, between 1520 BC and 1075 BC, and the other 5 are from after 332 BC, during the Ptolemaic period. While the more recent mummified baboons appear to have been captively bred, the older New Kingdom baboons came from an area encompassing parts of modern-day Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia. Punt existed in the southern Red Sea region, very likely on the coasts of Eritrea and Somaliland, Dominy said. While this assertion is unproven, all signs point toward it being accurate, bringing researchers one step closer to solving the long-standing mystery of the legendary land of Punt. Ram-headed Sphinx and flooded tomb. In early 2019, archaeologists and workers uncovered an 11.5-foot tall statue of a ram-headed Sphinx at the Gebel El Silsila site near Aswan. The sandstone carving dates back over 3,000 years and was found in an ancient workshop. Experts are unsure why the statue was left there, but they believe it may have been a cancelled order, according to archaeologist Maria Nilsson, the director of the site's excavation. She explained in a Live Science interview that the Sphinx was likely carved at the end of Amenhotep III's reign. He was King Tut's grandfather and may have commissioned the sculpture, but it was cancelled and abandoned when he died. Situated along the Nile riverbanks, Gebel El Silsila was both a rock quarry and a home for the quarry's workers, as evidenced by the discovery of a necropolis containing the remains of men, women, and children dating back to Egypt's 18th dynasty. Archaeologists have made numerous other headline-worthy finds there in recent years, including statues of a power couple carved right into the rock, a man named Nefertiti and his wife found in modern-day northern Sudan. In addition to the ancient power couple, scientists have uncovered a waterlogged mass grave containing a soupy mess of human remains at Gebel El Silsila. Over 50 people, 1/3 of whom are children, were laid to rest in the now flooded tomb. The adult male remains bear evidence of back problems and broken bones, indicating that they were accustomed to a life of hard labor. While they were given a dignified enough burial to show that they were not slaves, experts are puzzled as to why so many people were entombed together. Egyptologists say that the rediscovery of these people and their names would have been of great religious significance. By speaking their names and finding them thousands of years later, we are ensuring their place in the afterlife. The mysterious skull of Akhenaten. There are many mysteries surrounding ancient Egypt, including why they built the pyramids and what they used them for, and how did they know so much about engineering, farming, health, and astronomy. The civilization's creations were so elaborate and massive that some people believe the builders must have received some outside help in the form of extraterrestrial visitors. In other words, aliens from outer space. If you watch or have heard of the show Ancient Aliens, apparently many people ask if ancient Egyptian artwork hides evidence of alien contact. Conspiracy theorists cite certain carvings and other artwork as evidence of this. Depictions of the pharaoh Akhenaten, for example, seem to show alien-like characteristics, like an elongated skull, an oddly shaped body, and a disproportionately large midsection. Yale School of Medicine professor Erwin Braverman says that he was often portrayed in sculptures and carvings with a thin neck, elongated head, large buttocks, breasts, and even a prominent belly, suggesting pregnancy. A user pointed out in Michigan State University's anthropology blog that Akhenaten's name translates to the disk of the sun, leading some people to believe that the so-called disk was actually a UFO. After all, if the ruler came from it, as mythology seems to imply, it would realistically have to be something other than the sun. One carving depicting Akhenaten's family raises even more questions. The children in the image seem to share their father's alien-like features, and the adults are wearing hats, which some people believe were used for concealing their elongated alien skulls. Without being aliens, it is entirely possible, however, that Akhenaten and his loved ones did have large conical skulls because they may have practiced something called artificial cranial deformation, which often involved deliberately elongating the skull. Egyptologists also believe that the Akhenaten family may have some genetic medical syndrome which would explain their strange head shape. Braverman says that Akhenaten's elongated head could be due to the gene defect causing craniosynostosis, in which the fibrous joints of the head fuse at an early age and disrupt the process of skull formation. Braverman said that a number of Akhenaten's relatives, including his daughters and two other 18th dynasty rulers, Queen Hatshepsut and King Tut, all had cranial abnormalities that mimicked craniosynostosis. The Amarna letters. The earliest known examples of international diplomacy can be found in the Amarna letters, a collection of 382 clay tablets dating back to the 14th century BC. They detail the correspondences between Egyptian pharaohs and their rivals, including Babylonian, Assyrian, Hittite, and Mitanni rulers, and reveal the raw human emotions that came with competing tensions and delicate negotiations. The pharaohs and kings discuss exchanging princesses, marriages, trade, complaints between each other of how Egypt called the shots, and a letter to a queen from a lesser wife saying that she was supposed to get 2 solid gold statues, but had gotten gold-plated statues of wood instead. The letters also contain rules and conventions for these types of interactions, which represent the very first diplomatic policies. Known as the Amarna system, it facilitated the establishment of equality among the great powers of the time. They would begin the letters politely, and if they were the same status, they would call each other brother, that kind of thing. Those in power utilized this system for over 2 centuries as part of the empire-building process, and it served its purpose well by maintaining some semblance of peace and stability. The tablets span several 18th dynasty rulers' reigns, including Amenhotep III, Akhenaten, and perhaps Smenkhare or Tutankhamun. Found in the 1880s after a series of chance finds in pits under an administrative building, the clay tablets were found in several batches, and luckily the archaeologists knew that they were important right away. They were written in Akkadian, not Egyptian, using cuneiform, and were mostly letters received by the Egyptians 3,000 years ago. A select few were actually written by the pharaohs themselves. Origins of the Hyksos. Researchers long believed that the Hyksos, a mysterious dynasty that ruled Egypt from 1638 BC to 1530 BC, were foreigners who invaded the area and took over. But recent research shows that this enigmatic group may have come from within Egypt all along. A recent study detailing the chemical analysis of teeth from Hyksos graves indicates that the supposed first foreigners to rule Egypt had already been there for generations when they came to power. Written records of the Hyksos are scarce. Manetho, a Ptolemaic priest who lived during the 3rd century BC, long after the Hyksos fell out of power, wrote that they invaded Egypt from the northeast after the Middle Kingdom fell around 1650 BC, during a time of turmoil and instability. Some hieroglyphs also talk of the Hyksos' conquest and reign. But it's hard to know what to believe because succeeding dynasties destroyed records and spread propaganda about previous rulers, earning the Hyksos a reputation associated with disorder and chaos. Archaeological excavations at Avaris, the Hyksos capital, suggest that they originated in the Near East, according to lead study author Chris Stantis. The tombs with non-Egyptian burial customs were especially intriguing. Typically, males were buried with bronze weaponry in constructed tombs without scarabs or other protective amulets like Egyptians would have been buried with. While the Hyksos were indeed a distinctive ethnic group, they arrived in Egypt in migratory waves. Most of the men whose teeth were examined in the study settled in the area prior to the Hyksos' reign. Additionally, many of the corpses are female, and it appears as though the Hyksos people originated from various regions. These findings fly in the face of the notion that the group entered Egypt as a unified invading army and alerted scientists to the need to look further into the role women played in the Hyksos migration. Clearly, they did not invade Egypt. The Gilded Mummy. In mid-2018, an Egyptian-German team of archaeologists announced the discovery of a tomb complex containing a mummification workshop, mummies, sarcophagi, and a silver face mask gilded with gold. The site, located in Saqqara, contains several underground burial shafts, with some measuring over 100 feet deep. The silver mask, which contains eyes made from calcite, obsidian, and a black gemstone, dates back to sometime between 664 BC and 404 BC. It's one of several artifacts found at the site that are believed to be at least 2,500 years old. Team leader Ramadan Badri Hussein referred to the mask as a sensation, adding very few masks of precious metal have been preserved to the present day because the tombs of the most ancient Egyptian dignitaries were looted in ancient times. The mask belongs to a mummy found inside a badly damaged wooden coffin with an image of the goddess Mut on it. Researchers believe, based on what's left of the writing on the coffin, that the deceased was a priest who served Mut. At the mummification workshop, which is inside the remains of a mud brick and limestone building, the team found bowls and measuring cups bearing the names of substances that were used in the mummifying process, as well as 2 large basins that they believe were used for preparing mummies. Shafts beneath the workshop led to the mummies that were discovered at the site. At last update, excavations were ongoing, meaning there could be more exciting discoveries to come. Mummified lion cubs. In late 2019, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities announced the first ever discovery of 2 mummified lions in ancient Egypt. A team of archaeologists led by Mustafa Waziri, the Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, found the pair in a tomb full of cat statues and cat mummies in the necropolis of Saqqara. Measuring about 3 feet long each, the lions were not fully grown when they died. They were discovered near 3 other mummified big cats of unknown species, perhaps leopards or cheetahs. The lions and big cats were surrounded by 20 smaller feline mummies, as well as 100 cat statues made from wood, stone, and metal, including bronze. Experts dated the tomb to around 2,600 years ago during Egypt's 26th dynasty, based on an ebony statue of the goddess Neith they found inside the burial. In addition to these artifacts, archaeologists discovered what may be the largest scarab ever found in Egypt, measuring over a foot in diameter. Previous excavations turned up other cat burials and statues, indicating that the site was a popular place for cat worship during the 26th dynasty. Magnificent catacomb. During the period of Roman rule in Egypt, a little less than 2,000 years ago, a woman named Demetria was entombed in an ornately decorated catacomb within the vast necropolis of Saqqara. Everything's going down in Saqqara. Discovered by an international team of Egyptian and Japanese experts in 2019, the burial contains a carving depicting Demetria in a white dress carrying grapes while a pet of an unknown species looks up at her. At the request of Life Science, Roman Egypt expert Roger Bagnall translated the Greek inscriptions visible in images of the tomb. One carving found on the image of Demetria in a white dress states, "Demetria, daughter of Menelaus, granddaughter of Ammonia, worthy, farewell." Bagnall further explained that Ammonia was likely Demetria's paternal grandmother, and that her paternal grandfather may have been considered illegitimate since he isn't named in the inscription. Another carving shows the gods Thoth, Seth, and Anubis with wings over them, along with a statement that translates to "of Menelaus, son of Philemon, servant and reverent." According to Bagnall, the inscription contains the rarely used name Therapeutes in describing Menelaus' servitude, indicating that he was serving gods rather than people. The team also found mummy remains, figurines, and 2 feline statues. Mystery mummy. Archaeologists were stumped when in early 2019 they encountered a tomb along the Nile River near Aswan, belonging to a mysterious man named Tidjit. Inside, they found the wooden fragments of the coffin that once held his remains, along with at least 34 mummies, including young children. Built sometime between the 6th century BC and the 4th century AD, the tomb also contained numerous artifacts, including vases, amphorae, vessels containing food, funerary mask fragments, a stretcher that was likely used for transporting bodies into the chamber, and a ba bird statue depicting a bird with a human head. This type of creature was common for the time and represented a person's soul. A collection of mummy-making materials, including cartonnage and bitumen, were found next to a lamp near the tomb's entrance. This is just one of an estimated 300 tombs located near the mausoleum of the Aga Khan, an imam or spiritual leader of Shia Ismaili Muslims. Who Tajit was, and whether his tomb corresponds with nearby burials, is unknown. The Bent Pyramid. In the Dashur Royal Necropolis, located roughly 25 miles south of Cairo, sit two pyramids, the Bent Pyramid and its satellite. Both are roughly 4,600 years old. The 4th dynasty pharaoh Sneferu commissioned their construction around 2600 BC during Egypt's Old Kingdom. The 331-foot-tall Bent Pyramid represents an architectural transition between the Dozer Step Pyramid, which was built between 2667 BC and 2648 BC, and the Meidum Pyramid, which dates back to around 2600 BC, the same time the Bent Pyramid was built. It gets its name from its bent look, which results from the structure rising up from the ground at a steep 54-degree angle and then tapering off at a 43-degree angle near the top. Sneferu's final resting place is unknown, but researchers say it's possible that he was entombed inside the Bent Pyramid. In mid-2019, the site reopened to tourism for the first time since 1956 following an extensive restoration, enabling visitors to enter at the pyramid's north face and travel through a 260-foot-long tunnel, which leads to two chambers. They can also explore the 59-foot-tall satellite pyramid, which may have been dedicated to Sneferu's wife, Hetepheres. Thanks for watching! What's your favorite thing about ancient Egypt? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!